This is a good sign. I see you're here.
Yes. Okay, trying because my technology is stupid.
Stupid
Okay.
technology.
It is stupid. I am doing okay, let me see.
If you have two devices on, it's gonna feedback.
Okay, here we go. Whoa.
I'm gonna start drinking if this is how this podcast is gonna go.
No. We're gonna be fine.
I've got a bunch of selection behind me here, so I can just grab a bottle and get started. Hey, there you are.
Hey.
Yeah, I can see you and I can hear you.
Okay, because part of what's weird is like sometimes my computer audio won't work, so I was trying to do it on my phone, but
Yeah, that could be tricky.
technology.
There is always the first 5 to 60 minutes is spent getting this to work. So
Yes. And like my lighting's all weird and just, I don't know, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, well, I do this enough, and I have so I have a side business where I sell high-end bass guitars, and I do that out of my home. So I have all the lighting and stuff like that. I mean, I still look like a troll, but I'm a well-lit troll. And
Well, yeah, seriously, I look like a corpse. Like the lighting, I'm so white. I was like, oh my gosh, I need like a tan light or something. Okay.
Yeah, the key is you'd like to have like a light above you, so which is like a key light, and then a light directly in front of you, which is filling your face. So
I tried. There's that one.
Yeah.
And that one.
Yeah, it's just none of those are particularly flattering. So like there's mine.
Nice.
And then that's so like they're actually designed for
yours is a good
what I'm
one,
doing here. But if you're not doing this all the time, why would you bother, right?
Yeah, this is true. We'll get there. It's fine. Everything's fine.
You look fabulous though, so don't worry about it.
You.
You're great. You're great. Yeah. I would give anything to have your hair. It's amazing. It looks like I have your hair because both my sons have like bright red, copper colored hair. And my wife and I, neither one of us have that, but grandparents had red hair. So
I'm in the same boat. Neither of my parents were redheads. My grandpa was a redhead. I have 4 kids and none of them are redheads.
Oh my gosh.
I know. I have 2 blondes and 2 brunettes.
Yeah.
You're redheads.
How you like that? My goodness. Okay. How old are your kids?
12, 9, 6, and 2.
Oh, goodness. Goodness gracious. Yeah, you're busy.
We are busy. Yeah.
And then you figured with your spare time, you would just buy one of the largest school music dealers in our industry.
I mean, yeah, whatever. No,
what else are you going to do? You know?
Right. Like a regular
raise
job.
Kids and sell violins? Geez, that's not even work.
Yeah. I know. I was like, how hard can it be? I mean, it's fine.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so let me kind of give you a rundown of like how this process works and all that kind of stuff. It's really pretty informal. I keep the podcast really light and informal. I can do any editing that I need to do after. So if I ask you a question and you don't like it, you can say, no, I don't want to talk about that. Or if you get halfway through an answer and you think, you know what, scratch that, I've got a better answer, then we can totally do that. So it's pretty relaxed. And then after we're finished, you probably got a notification that I'm recording right now. So after we're finished, at some point in the next month or so, I'll edit it down. It'll be posted to both YouTube and through all the podcast channels. And I push to publish about twice a month. I figure that's enough content. Plus, I have a lot of other things to do too, so I can't, do this all the time. So, but and the whole point of doing this podcast is a couple things. I mean, one, I'm doing it. My main reasons to do it are that I want to like meet and know. I know a lot of people in our industry, but I know a lot of people like this well. I know them like damn well. Like, we see each other and say hi and stuff like that, but not as well as maybe, or like, we go to each other's idea center sessions and stuff. And so I wanted to like deepen those relationships. And then I wanted to be inspired and challenged with my own business and get some ideas. And then I wanted to share some both successes and best practices, and also just stories of failures and struggles with other retailers to try to help people in our industry. And so sometimes, like, some of the stuff, it's designed for us to kind of talk about, like, hey, let's talk about something terrible that's happened to you. And part of it is just to get other people to realize, like, man, we all go through the same stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and it's how we deal with it. And then sharing our successes, it's not really for us to brag and say how wonderful we are, but more just to share with other people, so that maybe someone else will go, oh man, that's a great idea. Or, I've been thinking about doing that. I should finally get off my rear and do it. So it's mainly designed to just, help people. That's what I'm trying to do.
Okay.
Starting with myself, try to help myself first. So
that's good. It's good.
Okay. So, and then the other thing I'll just tell you is that unlike most conversations, usually I'll give you fewer verbal tics and clues as we go along. Because when you listen to it, it can be just a little distracting if someone's constantly giving you a lot of uh-huhs and yeahs and stuff like that. So don't take my silence to be that I'm not interested or whatever. If I'm not interested, you'll see probably this or
Or like this. Like,
yeah, exactly. Or I'll start drinking or something.
Or you're just gone and
just
like,
take that phone out.
Yeah,
exactly. So anyway, okay. All right. Any questions before we get started?
Let me turn off my phone just a second.
Okay. Oh yeah, that's a good idea. I did the same thing.
Phone's off. Good.
Smart. Okay. So this is really exciting. I'm excited to get to talk to you today, Laura, because you have had an interesting career already up to this point, working for string manufacturers. I think you've had a stint in some retail before. But it from the outside in, it looks like you just from out of the blue jumped in and like bought one of our industry's larger school music retailers, and certainly one of the larger California school music retailers. And for those who aren't familiar with Nick Rail Music, of course we don't know how accurate these reports are, but according to the top 200 reports of that Music Trades put out, this is ranked around the 60s or so in terms of volume size. So this is a good size business for someone to just kind of come in and like, hey, I was your Maple Leaf strings rep. Hey, now I own this business. Like, that's a pretty big deal. So I want to jump right into that and just tell me how that story came about. Like, how did you come about to actually end up purchasing Nick Rail Music?
Sure. I don't know how far back you want me to go.
All the way back. All the way back to where it's interesting or relevant.
Okay, so I started in retail in bridal, and my mom had a bridal store, and so I was helping her run that, doing, buying, consulting, going to the trade shows, helping customers, things like that. I graduated college in music, and immediately, as soon as I graduated, just went around to all the music the music stores in the area with my resume, just saying, like, please hire me. I don't know what to do now. And
were you a string player?
No, I don't play strings. I play piano.
Okay.
That's basically my only instrument. So I just went around to music stores with my resume and was like, please hire me. I need a job. I was pregnant at the time with my oldest. My husband and I had been married a couple years, and, we're just trying to figure out what the next steps were. So I went to Summer Haze. I applied. They hired me, which was great, just as a temp for the summer and fall. I worked there for a little while, got to kind of know what that was all about. And then our lives kind of went crazy with just my husband's job and education and things like that. So we moved around a lot after that. We were down in the Caribbean for 2 years, down on St. Martin. We were in California. We were in Chicago. We were in Utah. We kind of settled in Utah. We thought temporarily for like a year or two. I went back and asked Summer Haze for a job again. They were like, sure. I was like, thank you for hiring me. So that was in 2012, and worked there for about 4.5 years. And about 6 months into that, I realized that there really wasn't anyone specializing in strings, and that's where a lot of the sale potential was. So I talked to Chris Behrens. I said, hey, you should put me in the strings department. He was like, you don't know anything about strings. I was like, yeah, I'll learn. It's great. Let's do it. So I did. So I ran their strings department for about 4 years. It was really successful, super fun. I loved it. I have just loved the strings industry. Is really amazing. And that's where I met the Maple Leaf people. So I don't know at what point I kind of was like, well, I don't really want to work Saturdays anymore. I have all these kids now. We have 3 kids. So I kind of reached out and was like, what's another career opportunity? So the Maple Leaf people took me on as the Western sales rep. So I was doing all of the Western United States, basically Colorado West. So I would travel a couple times a month, visiting music stores, selling orchestral strings. I don't know how to play them, but I can tell you all about them. And it was great. So I knew the Nick Rail people already because I grew up in this area. So I'm from Southern California. I grew up around the stores, like kind of had a gist about what they were. And then as I was doing my Maple Leaf job, I got to know more of the team members. So I had met almost all the managers, some of the ed reps. I got to know Lucky, Nick, kind of the rest of the team. And then I kind of just heard through the grapevine about a year and a half ago, that Nick was looking for a buyer. And I got this crazy idea that was like, well, both my parents have businesses and they like being an entrepreneur, and I know about music. Maybe I should look into it. So I texted Nick and was like, hey, I heard you're selling. And he was like, I don't know how you heard that, but yeah. And I was like, we should talk. And so we had breakfast. One day I came into California, we had breakfast and just kind of went from there. I applied for an SBA loan, got the SBA loan, and bought the business. The final sale went through on September 20th. It was a little bit of a bumpy road. There's a lot.
And it was September 20th of last year, of 2019.
2019, right? 2019.
So yeah, not that long ago. Was that maybe
not
7
long
months?
ago.
Something 8 months? Yeah.
8.5 months.
Gotcha.
8.5 months. But yeah, so it was a pretty steep learning curve, I think, for all of us involved, especially with the multiple locations and all the SBA requirements. So it took a long time. It took a long time from the very first time we talked about it to when it went through was over a year that we were working on everything. And it was really hard to keep a secret like that. Oh my goodness. That was challenging. That was hard. It was hard, but it was good. It was good. But yeah, so here we are. Running the business. It's good.
A heck of a time to jump into music retail. I mean, especially,
ideal, no.
You know, I mean, like, especially, I mean, first of all, jumping into music retail is tricky no matter what. Then adding in a multi-location retailer, 3 or 4 or 6 times as hard. And then adding in a global pandemic unlike anything seen for 100 years. I don't know how much harder that becomes, but it's a hell of a lot harder. So tell me, like, how have you guys managed to get through? Not only, I mean, I definitely want to get into like what the early days and the struggles, stuff like that. But let's talk about just the last couple of months. Like, how has that affected your business?
So the last couple months have been hard. I'm trying to find the silver lining and be thankful for the things that we do have going for us and not be bogged down by the things that are not in my control that just make me want to curl in the
You could say,
position.
Donovan, it sucks.
No, it doesn't suck. It doesn't suck. It's not, no, it doesn't suck. I do think that this is going to sound super weird, but I do believe it. I'm a little bit at an advantage because it's my first year that I don't know what else to expect. So it's not like I have any of these preconceived notions of what exactly has been going on for 30 years. This is how it is every summer. This is how it is every March. All of our Aprils look like this. This is my first time anyway. Like, I worked retail with Summer Haze, so I get a gist of what the year looks like. And I talked with Nick and the team and been like, what do we usually do this time of year? But I don't have any set in stone ideas of what should be happening. So basically, anytime we have a win, and I'm like, that's great, because what else was it going to be? Like,
right, yeah, nothing to compare it to.
Right, that's exactly right. So I do think that has actually been helpful. We have some new team members too in some pretty high up positions that it's all of our first year doing it. So we're all just kind of taking the wins as they come. And if there's big challenges, we're like, hey, what are we going to do? We don't know any other way. So we're not really getting hung up on what could have or should have been. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. How have you been able to manage the cash flow? Because having like this, having the SBA payment that you're obligated to make, and then combining that with what I'm assuming is a reduction in cash and revenue, because I'm assuming you were able to looked through previous financials and you likely had benchmarks for what you were expecting in terms of revenue, and I'm assuming that you've had reductions in that. How have you navigated that process, or did you just have strong enough cash flow that you were able to still make that payment and everything's okay?
So there's two things that we took advantage of that are new government and SBA like assistance programs. The first was this thing they passed at the beginning of March that if you have these certain type of SBA loans, they will make your payments for 6 months. So I haven't had an SBA payment for April and May, and I won't have one for June. So that has been helpful, not needing to make those payments. And then we applied for a PPP loan like the day it came out, and I'm pretty sure we're like one of the first ones to get it. I can't believe how fast it went through. Mm-hmm. So we were able to get that, and that kind of helped us. We maintained our staff. We reduced hours, but we didn't cut hours, or we didn't cut staff at all. So yeah, it's pretty good.
Getting both those, the essentially the forgiveness, whether they're covering 6 months of payments and the PPP, definitely helps. I mean, when you're getting the loan payment covered and your payroll covered and your rent covered, that can be a big lifesaver.
One of the things that's a little obnoxious though with all of this, which I don't want to make it sound like I'm not thankful, because I really am thankful. But with all the PPP changes that they're making, it's kind of like I wish I had known at the beginning that these are the changes that they were going to make, because it really would have changed how we handled that PPP.
Yep.
Just because the changes that they're making with the rules for forgiveness, we would have done things differently now that they're making these pretty substantial changes. But I mean, it is what it is. I don't want to snub my nose at any of it.
Yeah, I know it's challenging too, because if you were trying to get in it quickly, because we were like you, we applied immediately, and we had already kind of had a space reserved because we'd heard this was coming like everybody else, and so we have a great relationship with our bank. So we got the money really quick, and then of course when you get the money really quick, then the clock started. Like you've got 8 weeks and you've got this, that, and the other. And so then you had to quickly make decisions of how to allocate the money and what you're doing. And then as you get, 4 or 5 weeks in, they're like, well, we might actually change this and that and make all this easier. And you're like, oh, God, man, that would have been a lot nicer. And I don't understand. Like, we're really fortunate. We've got we've got a great accountant that we use. So we use Friedman Kannenberg. And then we also have a really awesome VP of finance that's on our team as well. And she's super smart. And so between those two, they kept us kind of at the forefront, I think, of getting the loan and figuring out what to do. And I just couldn't imagine, if I didn't have those kind of people on my team, how I could have made heads or tails of this, because it's kind of complicated,
Yeah, it is. No, we use Friedman Kannenberg too, and they have been great with all of this. And then same with having a good relationship with our bank. I remember before all this happened, hearing someone, say in some session, I don't remember, be like, "Oh yeah, you need a really good relationship with your bank," and I was like, "Why do you need a relationship with your bank?" And now I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad we have a good relationship with our bank."
Yeah. Yes.
So it's good. It's been good. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. So on your internal team, do you have someone that is has the background in finance that's kind of taking the lead on all that stuff, or are you taking the lead on that? How's that handling?
So it's a team effort. I have my husband helping me. He has his master's in business administration and has been doing a lot of report running, and we look at all the spreadsheets and things like that. And then I also have a new team member in our accounts payables department who has been really helpful with all of this. He has a lot of experience in really complicated finances for businesses with multiple locations. And so having him new, I mean, he started like 2 weeks before all this happened. So I'm like, welcome to the deep end, here we are. But he's been really invaluable through all this too. So it's kind of a team effort. We meet pretty frequently, just going over reports and all of our finances and making sure that we all have an understanding of where we are, where we want to be, planning for the future, worst case scenario, but not overreacting and being so conservative that we can't grow at all. Yeah, it's a team effort.
You know, I think for school music dealers that get to a certain size, whatever that size is, I think in revenue, it's probably that 5 to 8 million mark, something like that. Having a finance person on your team is really important, you know, because you are basically financing a lot of things constantly, whether it's purchases from the vendors or your rentals and purchases to your customers, and then having someone that understands all those intricacies, I think, is such a critical part. And whereas combo retail, I mean, you know, if you can use a pencil and have a napkin handy, you can probably figure out most of that finance. Like, that's not that complicated. Like, well, I buy it for this and I sell it for that, and what's different, what's left is my profit. Like, it's pretty simple. But it gets a lot more complicated when you get into school music, I think.
Right.
So when you come in and, like, first of all, like I mentioned earlier, running retail is just a challenge. But you not only have one retail store, you've got 6, right?
We have 6, yep.
Yeah. Were you counting in your head to figure? You're like,
well, we have plans for opening a new one. So we're looking at opening our 7th location in the next month or 2. It was supposed to open June 1st, but with all the COVID stuff, it's delayed. Like, we can't even find anywhere to make us a cash wrap because everywhere's closed. So things are a little bit delayed, but we are opening another location that's going to be an exclusive string shop. The company is we're pretty band heavy, but my background's all in orchestral strings. So it's like, we should do this too. So we'll be opening a string shop in the next couple months. So we'll have 7 locations. So yeah. That's
awesome. So or condolences, one or the other, I'm not sure. So for point of sale, what do you guys use AIMSy? Okay. So, did Summer Haze use AIMSy as well?
No, Summer Haze has their own proprietary software.
Okay. So you're kind of new to AIMSy. How have you found that experience of using AIMSy?
It's not my favorite.
This is the bitch about AIMSy talk show. Just just kidding. Like, it's
not my favorite. I've used worse at other. I had a music store. I had a job at another music store. I don't know if we're allowed to, like, drop names.
Yeah, of course.
So I worked like 6 months at a Sam Ash in Chicago.
Okay.
And their software is just awful. I think it's still on DOS. Like, still.
Yeah.
It's not great. So that was worse. So I like AIMSy better than that.
You know, there's a lot of things to love about AIMSy, or I guess now they call it AIMS on the latest version. And certainly the integration from top to bottom, inside out. If you do lessons, or if you do rentals, you do repairs, you do retail, all of your accounting, like, having all of that in one piece of software is truly amazing. And, you know, I do think it's the best solution for, you know, our industry, for people that are doing all those services that I mentioned. But it's not without some drawbacks, you know, for sure. And
it's not very user-friendly. Once you learn how to do everything, then it's fine. But getting to that point is really cumbersome.
Yeah. It's a pretty serious learning curve. I had someone share that they felt like it was probably about 1.5 years long process of, like, implementing it and kind of, like, understanding it and stuff. And yeah, that's a lot, you know. That's a lot. Yeah, and even when you do have it, there's issues. Like, we've been trying to handle this V12 upgrade, which I think they've now finally got this converter working so much better than what it was originally. But we've got an IT specialist on our staff who's super smart. He's got tons of accreditations. Like, he's just great at this stuff, and he's struggled with getting this stuff to work. And again, I think, like, God, how would someone who's like a 10-person music store work this out? Like,
we have not made the jump to version 12 yet. I'm a little scared. We're waiting just a little longer.
Yeah. Why have you not made that change?
Just that I haven't heard great things about it yet. So, and everyone I kind of talked to is like, oh, if you don't need to, don't do it yet. So I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
We're just going to sit tight for a little longer.
Yeah. Maybe wait for version 13.
Or at least like 12.5. I don't know.
Yeah. I think we're going to try it again on June 22nd. And
That'd be good.
this will probably be probably our third or fourth time, like, to try to actually do it as a company and launch it as a company. I mean, I don't know how many times we've done it as like test conversions. I mean,
Sure.
2 or 3 dozen easily. But like trying to get it to launch as a company, it's just been a tire fire every time up to this point. So I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea though. Like, I do appreciate what those guys do. I would love for them to hire a graphical user interface designer, even if it's just temporary. Just get someone to make the stuff look better than what it does. And then maybe some kind of SQL database expert to speed the thing up, because it does tend to run a little on the slow side, even the newest version. And I thought with this new database, that was supposed to be one of the big things we'd get was speed. But I don't know that much about it, so I could be wrong. So tell me some of the challenges you've had. I mean, 6 locations, very difficult. It's difficult. And I guess before I get to that question, how far apart are your locations from each other on average?
They're pretty far apart. They're 1 to 2 hours apart from each other. So the furthest distance we have is from Santa Barbara to San Diego. You're looking like between a 4 to 6 hour drive, depending on traffic.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a pretty good spread for sure. So obviously moving inventory between each location and communicating with all the locations, culture between all the locations, those are all things really challenging. How have you managed those things?
So Nick had already set up a pretty good company culture. When I very first started, I went around to every store and interviewed every employee just to kind of get a feel for who they were, what they liked about working there, what things they would want to see changed. I kind of got to know everyone, and already there was a really good company culture feel. Everyone really enjoyed what they were doing and felt valued, and I wanted to make sure to keep that because it's just crucial to your job performance, and sales are only going to happen if people are liking what they're doing. So we have started a new thing in the last, I think 2-3 months ago. I do weekly Zoom meetings with all of the managers individually, and then we're doing meetings every other or every 2 weeks with all of the ed reps as a group. So part of that is just to keep the communication open, and that they know that every week they can count on this meeting. They can talk about their challenges. We can discuss projects, just checking in with them, seeing how everything's going. So that I think has been valuable, the communication, and also just establishing my expectations for what I'm looking for. I know sometimes that's challenging because things are so far apart. But yeah, just being really precise and having good communication and following up and following through with things that we've asked. And yeah, I think just communication is key. I think that's a big part of it. It's a big part of it.
So give me an idea of some expectations that you have for your store managers in a remote location.
I think of a good one. Our most recent thing that one of our recent projects that we're working on, we're updating all of our in-store merchandise so that all the tags are the same company-wide. Because each location kind of had their own way to tag and price things. And I was like, nope, we need uniform looks across the company. So here is what we're looking for. This is what I want them all to look like. And then just checking in with them. So every time I talk with them on the phone, I'm like, hey, show me what you've been working on. Send me pictures. I want to see them. And just making sure that they realize that they're going to be accountable for these projects, but also setting realistic expectations. So I can't be like, hey, I want everything updated by Tuesday. There's not time. Right. There's just not enough time. So just know that the fact that they can know that I'm going to be I'm going to be checking in on it, I think it helps motivate and then makes it feel like it's not for nothing. Because if I had never checked in on it again, then why would they ever do any project? Because I don't even care, Right. Just being like, this is what I want. I want updates on it regularly. Show me pictures, point your camera there during our Zoom conversation, and just making them accountable for some of these projects, and then giving praise. I think that's a big one. Just telling them how grateful and thankful I am that they are putting in this effort. And I know that it's challenging right now, and I know we're all struggling, and that your staff is under stress, you are under stress, and just kind of being a solid person that they can rely on, I think it's good.
Yeah. Well, setting those expectations and then creating the accountability of them is such an important part of our job. And frankly, it can be, I think, one of the least enjoyable parts of owning a business, having to be the one that holds everyone accountable. That, and ultimately, especially if your background is one who's used to doing things, like, so for me, I'm just accustomed to doing projects and putting in new ideas and stuff like that. And it's taken me a long time, and I'm still working on getting better at it, at kind of getting comfortable with the one of like, all right, my job. I had someone, Barry Drazen told me this years ago. He's like, Donovan, your job is to put things on other people's plates and then watch the plates. And he was asking me about something. I was like, man, I just got too much stuff on my plate. He's like, no. Your job is to put things on other people's plates and then watch the plates. And I was like, huh. Now,
yes.
That was probably 4 years ago, and I'm still working on that. But I'm a slow learner. So
no, that definitely. So my husband and Nick both are, if I tell them, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling so overwhelmed. Both of them are like, well, who can you delegate to? I'm like, oh yeah, like, yeah, that is my job to delegate. So
right,
yeah.
But then you still have to like follow up with it, because I'm great at delegating, but right. I'm not great at. I've tried to get better and better about setting clear expectations and when I would like things done. And what I find tricky, and share any feedback you've got on this, I find it tricky to do a couple things. One, to set a clear goal that's going to make them have to kind of like focus without being unreasonable, and then creating accountability where I want them to be the best version of themselves, but I don't want to be an unrealistic, unreasonable taskmaster that's just constantly do more, and never satisfied with anyone's results. And so it's tricky to find. And now those things all live on a continuum. So the person who wants everything done right now and done perfectly, and the person who doesn't want to, doesn't like to follow up. There's somewhere in between that one can be, right? It's not an either or of like, well, I'm either gonna like rip them a new one, or I'm gonna just let it all slide. But how do you balance that?
So that's a little challenging to answer, because I'm not 100% sure we're there yet. So in the perfect world, I think a lot of it's just based on effort. So I have some managers that are really, really great at following through with certain things, and maybe not so great at following through with other things. But it just depends on what they're dealing with at an individual store. So setting my expectations company-wide, but then recognizing each individual store's challenges. So some of them might have staffing challenges, other ones we're doing some renovations, so they have that challenge of dealing with, moving stuff around and all the construction that's going on. Others have really challenging customers. So setting my expectations company-wide, but then realizing each store's own limitations, and just finding a balance between, forcing them to do all these things in a timely manner, but not well executed, and then giving them the necessary time, but not too much time, to make sure that it actually is happening to the standard that we want.
Have you found that those weekly Zoom meetings, that's an appropriate cadence, like an appropriate length of time to have those one-on-one meetings?
Yeah, right now it is. I don't know if it's something we need to do forever and ever and ever. But one of the challenges that I've found owning the business for such a short amount of time and having this huge crisis that we're dealing with, I didn't have a lot of time to build this level of trust with my managers that they really can, I'm still kind of a stranger, and here I am putting so much responsibility on them. So I think these weekly meetings have been really good in building this level of trust and rapport with them. I send minutes out after every meeting. We go through the minutes at the following meeting and make sure that, I have them separated by things we talked about and action items. And so the action items, I follow up with them. This is what we talked about last week. Where are you with that? And part of that's just to help me keep on track too, because there's 6 stores. It can be easy to let things fall through the cracks. But it's right now the weekly meetings are good. They're just 15 to 30 minutes. I can foresee in the future maybe not doing them every week, maybe every other week. But right now I think it's working really well, just because the climate is changing so rapidly every day that it's almost like weekly meetings aren't even enough.
Yeah. Well, and you're still building that relationship too, and that's so important, because you're in this boat where, you personally owe millions of dollars and but they're the ones that really have to pay for it, and so you've got to kind of get that relationship together where, they want to work for, your mutual success.
Right.
So you mentioned that Nick had already built, he had a successful business and a good culture there, which I totally believe. Like I said, you don't get to that level of success in our industry by not doing it on purpose and with intention and stuff. But even with all of that, and not saying this in any way to say anything negative about Nick at all, but when you took over, what's some of the things that you wanted to change or improvements you wanted to make? Obviously, one you'd mentioned was opening a string shop, which is obvious given your background. But what are some of the tweaks and changes that you wanted to make for the next generation of Nick Rail music?
So I don't want to say anything that's going to make it look like things weren't great already. But there definitely is areas for improvement. Technology is one of them. It just is kind of lacking. So we're working on some improvements on those. We're revamping the website, looking to, we just upgraded all the phone systems. We're upgrading the website. We're upgrading some of our point of sale systems, like just the actual physical systems. Working on better communication. I don't know. There's a lot of little areas that need a little improvement. I feel like the company was getting a little comfortable, and I don't want to get stuck in that routine. So I think we're pushing pretty hard in a lot of different areas to just grow and progress and increase. I don't know, that sounds like a really generic answer, but
well, it just sounds like a lot of infrastructure. Right? I mean, you're working on roads and bridges and telecoms. I mean, you're working on the core stuff of any business. It's not always new sexy things of new platforms, or I mean, you do have new locations coming or whole new strategies, but a lot of it's just reinvesting in the things that you've got and then trying to make kind of reiterative improvements as you go forward.
Right. And there was a lot of things that were on Nick's plate and Winston's plate, who he's retired, so he's not with us anymore. But there was a lot of things on their plates that didn't need to be. And I think it took up a lot of time that could have been spent, exploring other ways to progress and grow. So I'm trying really hard to make sure that I'm not getting stuck in the weeds, and that I'm working more on the business rather than in the business.
Right.
So I think that's been helpful too. I think it leaves a lot of room for growth, which is good.
Yeah, that whole phrase, working on the business versus in the business. I mean, obviously it's a straight out of the E-Myth Revisited, one of the best business books. If you have, anyone who hasn't read it, man, you got to read that one. And I think for a lot of us, when we read it, we're just oh my gosh, that that is totally me. We could all recognize ourselves in there somewhere for sure. So again, anyone who's not familiar, Nick Rail, primarily school music specialty shop. I mean, you do some acoustic guitars and stuff like that, but it's all kind of catered around a lesson program and the school music rental program. You offer repairs, you offer lessons. With your lesson teachers, are they employees or are they independent contractors?
No, they're independent contractors. So that's one area that we are still not quite sure how to navigate going forward. We offer studio space at all of our locations, but the teachers are not our employees. So as of right now, with as much research as I've been able to find and figure out, I don't know when we're going to be doing lessons again. It's kind of just remains to be seen what people's comfort level is.
Mm-hmm. Have you done them online, or is it just not at all?
Not at all. So because we do not have any teachers on staff. So they are still teaching lessons through Zoom, but just at home. So.
Yeah. And do your teachers collect their own payment and stuff for lessons? And so they're just not paying you for rent. There's no revenue coming in.
Right. And it wasn't a huge stream of revenue. So really we're not like,
yeah,
it's fine.
Yeah. Is that an area that you want to grow, or do you have designs of growing other things and leaving that as it is?
So it's an area that I want to modify. I think in the grand scheme of things, I would like to have the teachers on staff, but we don't quite have the infrastructure built in for that yet.
What's the infrastructure needed for that?
Well, just trying to figure out a way to have an increase of staff by that many people, and then figuring out a way to track all their schedules and payments, and we haven't really quite got into it yet.
Amesy, the lesson scheduler in Amesy handles all of that. And in our case, we've got one person, Misty Christek, who's our kind of lesson administrator and oversees our AR. And she's, for all of our locations, she's essentially like the lesson coordinator for all of our locations. And she's able to handle all that. But it's, using Amesy. Now, in our case, our teachers are employees. And, I feel pretty strongly about that. We've had them be contractors in the past. And, I kind of realized that I'd rather have, 120 employees than 50 employees and 70 independent people. And I want like an army of people that support our company. And when you have independent contractors, of course, they're running their own business and renting a space from you. And I wanted people that we were promoting my business and our business together. And I wanted to be able to have more control over what we were doing. I wanted to be able to have total control over the revenue. And it's been a great move for us. The little bit that we paid in payroll tax to have them be employees is more than offset by other gains that we make in other places. So to me, it's a no-brainer to do it that way, and not very expensive. And I've yet to hear a great argument otherwise, unless people just have plenty of income and cash flow and just don't need, the additional revenue and overhead and the workload that comes with it. And there are some stores I talk to that's their position. Lessons aren't a significant portion of what they're doing. They don't have much they don't have like a heart for it. They don't have any desires to grow it, and which is totally cool. Like they would rather spend that energy and efforts doing something else, and totally get that.
Well, and I think it might, whatever the frontier looks like in the fall, I think that will probably help us decide what direction we want to go with that. If there's not a lot of school programs, then we definitely are going to start pushing lessons and group lessons and all of that. It just kind of remains to be seen. We're still figuring it out.
I know for us, as we've gone through this pandemic, I've been really grateful that we've got all these revenue streams, because all of them kind of took a hit, but none of them took like a catastrophic hit. Sure. And actually, probably the one that may have taken the hardest hit initially was repair, because customers just weren't bringing repair in, and schools were out, so they weren't bringing repair in. But we had so much, rental stock that needed to be caught up, so those guys were able to stay busy doing that. But it was just so wonderful that even with a drop in lesson revenue, which I think ours is down about 30% right now, that still gives you 70% of your revenue that's coming in, which is, still sizable. Same thing with rental and retail. And it's just kind of nice to have like the four legs of the table or the four legs of the chair kind of propping the whole thing up. And even if one of the legs gets cut a little bit, it's like, it's still holding it up. It may have a weird lean to it, but but it's still there, So anyway, so tell me personally, just with looking at like your business skill set, what's one of your biggest assets, do you think?
Oh man. I don't know. I don't know. Like, that sounds terrible. We should probably edit this part out because it makes me sound highly unqualified.
Well, just all right, what are you good at? What are some of the things you think you're good at?
So I feel like I'm good at sales. That is one area as a company that we are not, I mean, I don't want to be a pushy salesperson because that's not what we're about. But I do think that a lot of our staff members take for granted the fact that they are experts in music products. They don't realize that they are. And so educating our customers on things that they might not know that they even need or want.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm strong at that. So like step up sales, it's great. I feel like I'm really good at building those relationships with customers and things like that. I feel like I'm charismatic. And so sometimes that helps motivate people, like leadership skills. I don't know. I mean, I guess you can ask my staff if they think I have good leadership skills.
That would be a fun podcast. Like we do one episode where we talk to the owner, and we do another episode where we talk to all the staff, and then we compare the differences. Yeah.
We can do them like anonymous, have them behind a screen. Like
yeah. Oh man. All right. That's going to be a whole new podcast right there. I love that idea.
So I do think one thing, I'm not afraid to ask questions. I know some people are afraid of asking questions because it makes them look real stupid, but I figure the situation that I put myself in with buying this business, and then the situation that the world has put us in with all these pandemics and crises and, oh my gosh, so many things. I've just been asking tons of questions. Like anyone that I can get on the phone to talk to me, I am asking like some pretty deep, intensive, maybe shouldn't even be shared questions, but I'm like, who else am I going to ask? Like, there's no way I'm going to know. I might as well ask. They could think I'm the biggest stupid person ever, but at least I have an answer and another perspective. So I think that's a skill, is not being afraid to ask for questions and, you know, just get as much information as you can and not being afraid of stuff you don't know.
Well,
I don't know. So
once you get over that fear of rejection, like you just kind of quickly realize like most people are gonna say yes or share that info with you. And yeah, it's funny that you said that. I think that's probably one of the things that I have that's set me apart, that's helped me be successful, is I had kind of that same mindset that you have, which is, I don't know how to do this. This person seems to have it figured out. I'm just going to go ask them. And because the worst thing they can say is no. And almost never have people said no. The only times they have is, you know, there's times where I've asked people that, like, especially in the very beginning, you know, I would ask, you know, really testing this theory out, but I would ask that even to like local competitors for stuff. And obviously they didn't want to share it, which I kind of understand. But, you know, beyond that, I've had, by and large, people are willing to help. And nothing else, people love to talk about how they've solved something because they've got problems they're trying to fix right now too. And to be able to go, oh yeah, I had that problem once. Let me tell you the story of how I actually did something that worked, you know, because sometimes you feel like I'm spending all my time on this thing and it's not working. But so to relive a success can be really nice.
Right.
Well, and the other thing you mentioned, which I really love, and it reminded me of a conversation I had today with one of our store managers, is, you know, when you ask your people questions and really get them involved, like it shows a lot of trust and respect in them too, you know.
Right.
So as you and I are recording this on June 4th, and Make Music Day is coming up on June 21st, so I've been talking with our management team about like, hey, start thinking about how we kind of want to promote that. It's coming up. And one of our managers was like, well, I'm going to be gone that day and the store's closed that day, so we're not doing anything. I'm like, well, no, like let's do something even if we're not open that day. He's like, well, I'm actually going to be gone like most of that week. I'm like, cool, then like get your staff to come up with something. Like you've got smart, capable people on your team. They could totally figure out something fun to do for Make Music Day. Like this doesn't have to be a top level, like, all right, we've got to get our best guy on this, you know, we've got to get the smartest person in the company to figure out what to do for Make Music Day. It's like, no, we got 100 and something musicians in here. Just figure something out. It doesn't have to be genius, you know, it just has to be fun and musical. And those guys are going to come up with something great, you know, and it's a project off his plate. And I think that's super, super important. So what are some things you're not good at?
Oh my gosh. Do we want to go chronologically or like alphabetically?
That's how we started this interview.
Right.
Give me the biggies.
So I don't want to say I'm like not good at it, but we're in the learning process, we're in the learning stages. I don't know. I think that would be a question for people that I work around. So it would just
You
depend
don't
on.
have a sense of. I mean, you just haven't done this that long, because you do this long enough, you'll quickly figure out, boy, I'm not good at this.
Right.
Like I'm probably more self-aware than most, but I definitely have a clear idea of what I'm not good at. You know, those are usually the first things I delegate to. Like if something requires routine or rote, I know, like if this has to be done every Monday or every Monday, Wednesday, Friday or whatever, I have to give that to someone else. Like I won't be able to do it. Like, and if it's something that, you know, if it's something that requires a creative solution or this process is overly complicated, I'm pretty good at solving that, you know, but I definitely have a very clear idea of what I'm not good at.
Okay, so that gave me a good one. I am not great at coming up with creative and inventive things in like basically any area. I'm great at copying ideas. Once I ask permission, of course. I don't want people to be angry. But yeah, not great at coming up with things. I think I'm pretty good at implementing things. But as far as coming up with things, I think I benefit from being able to ask questions and get lots of ideas from lots of people and have like an open mind about different options of ways we can handle things. But coming up with actual creative solutions, like with marketing and things like that, I'm just amazed at the things that people come up with that are just genius, and I'm great at copying them, but maybe not coming up with them. So.
Are you familiar with the Colby testing system? Is this something you've ever heard of? Okay, I hadn't either until a few years ago. So what Colby does is it's a series of questions. It's not a personality test. It's more of a test to assess how you like to interact and interface with information in the world. Okay, and but one of the things to me that was so enlightening and empowering about the Colby test is there's no good or bad score. And the other thing is that they explained that everything kind of lies on like a continuum, and so they'll take something that like they'll take a thing that maybe like let me pull mine up real quick. This doesn't make for good radio to watch me search, but I can cut this and come back to it. But I'll pull up my score because when I explain this to you, like it'll make a lot of sense. Make that larger. Okay. So they've got these 4 things that they test. So they and a big one is like a thing that they call quick start. And so if you test high in quick start, that just means that you're like really, really quick to initiate action on some. So when someone says, hey, what do you think about opening a new store? You're like, oh my gosh, I think that'd be fascinating. I'm going to start looking into locations. And like, you're just like, yeah, this is great. And, but being low in quick start isn't like a bad thing. If you're low in quick start, you tend to be the type of person that says, well, wait a minute, are we sure that opening a new store is a good idea right now because of what's going on with COVID and the fact that like you're a new business owner and blah, 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 blah. Like that's the opposite to quick start, but it's not a bad thing. Does that make sense? So like if you're high in quick start, you sort of like leap and then look, right? You're like, this looks awesome. You jump off the cliff and go, oh wait, there's no water down there. And and if you're low in it, then you would tend to kind of want to figure everything out before you make a decision. And of course, it's a scale from 1 to 10, so you could be in between. And for me, what's so liberating about that is, so on my quick start, I'm an 8, which means like I'm pretty quick to move into new ideas. But because I can move into them so quickly, which is it can be a great skill, especially like if we're in a situation where everything went wrong like this, I am super good at getting us through that. But if we're in a situation where we're not in a big hurry and we should take our time and analyze the risks and all that kind of stuff, I'm not good at that, but it's because I'm so good at moving quick. And I used to feel like it was a failure on my part. I used to feel like, man, if I was more disciplined, I could analyze risk better, and I'm not as good of a leader and a business owner as I should be because I'm not that. And what Colby does is kind of liberate you to say, no, you're not that because you are this, And but like I know that I need to be paired with someone who's lower in quick start. So
Right.
before I go take our company off the cliff, they can make sure that there's enough water and no rocks at the bottom.
Right. So that is a good point. So my husband is definitely, I'm more the quick start, like jump in both feet and then be like, oh my gosh, what have we done? But my husband is more like, whoa, let's just check this out first. So that's good pair. Yeah, we're making a good team on that. That's good.
Yeah. It's really fascinating, and most successful couples, whether they're it's a marriage or even like a business partnership, usually if they can succeed over a long period of time, they usually have complementing Colby scores. Or if you're one of those people that tends to score in the middle a lot, then you can kind of get along with anybody. But really strong partnerships tend to be like I tend to. Look for people that have opposite scores from what I have, like just intrinsically, because I respect that they have those skills. But those people tend to also drive me nuts when I work with them, and I'm sure I do the same to them, But if you know that about each other, then it really helps. Like if they know that, like, hey, your willingness to quickly jump into this thing is just your high quick start. Like it gives you a language and an understanding of it that makes it a lot. I don't know. It just makes it a lot more easy to understand and to communicate than just to think that, like, God, you're an idiot, which is how I used to think about myself, So anyway, I don't know. Might be something worth looking into. Colby, I love it. You can have all your team tested, and then it'll show you kind of how people will work together, where their friction points might be. And I think it's a lot more accurate and useful than like the Myers-Briggs or some of that kind of stuff. So you've got a big challenge you're going through now of putting all this stuff together, and you've been in this business for a while. Share with me where do you get some of your best ideas of where to take your business next?
So that's a hard question because of everything that we're going through right now. I'm trying really hard not to go too far down the rabbit hole of planning for the future. It's easy to get wrapped up in the doomsday thought process. So we're trying to take it slow. We want to keep things, if it's not broke, I don't want to try to fix it. If there's room for improvement, trying to find those ways. We're a part of a whole bunch of different groups. So I love the NASMD groups. I try to go to the idea centers at NAM. I send some of my staff members to the idea center and then have them report on things later. I watch the webinars that NAM puts on, the webinars that AIM puts on. Just kind of try to follow. I stalk other stores' websites and Facebook pages to see what they're doing. Normally, I would say we would be planning more differently. We would be planning in a different way than what we're going through right now. Because I just don't want to get hung up on plans that may or may not happen, and then get discouraged when they don't happen. And so trying to take it slow, just improve where we can improve, and not get too far ahead of ourselves.
So where we sit in early June, have you heard anything about what school music programs are intending to do yet for the next school year in California? Or is it still too early to know?
It's still too early. I'm hearing everything from they've canceled the programs and the teachers are getting let go to, oh no, we're hiring more teachers because the class sizes can't be as big. So we need to increase our band programs to, add more classes. So it's kind of all over the place, but nothing is really set in stone yet. I've heard things like they're doing all virtual classrooms with like small sectionals and things like that. Or again, that they're doing smaller class sizes so they can do social distancing in a band setting. Mm-hmm. But nothing really set in stone yet. I think it's still too early for people to decide.
Unfortunately, almost all those ideas sound terrible. How do you, with that, how do you plan for the fall? Like how has that affected your planning for your inventory buying? How has that affected your plans for expansion or staff changes or any of that kind of stuff? How has this uncertainty affected your short-term forecasting?
So it is making me act very conservatively, but not so conservatively that it's going to backfire on us. As far as purchasing and inventory management and things like that, we're really keeping track of what products are being released that are going to help facilitate virtual and distance learning. So anyone that's coming up with any type of, better classroom setups virtually, cleaning supplies.
Anything stand out that yet so far that you've seen?
So I haven't seen them in person yet, but I am impressed with the Hal Leonard iRig thing that they came up with. There's like two different levels of them that have like the light and the stand and the microphone. I think that's cool. That makes me excited. Yeah. So trying to like guess what people are going to be interested in that's still within school budgets. As far as purchasing goes, we're planning on a year that is not going to grow extraordinarily, but also isn't going to be much lower than last year. And like I said, this is my first year doing it, so I don't really know what to expect anyway. So we're just kind of like, well, the forecast kind of sort of looks like this. I guess we'll kind of sort of plan it like this.
Yeah. We'll have to do a follow-up in the fall and see how well you guessed.
Yeah. It'll be good. It'll either be like, nailed it, or it'll be like, that was terrible.
Yeah. I was talking with our VP of Finance a couple weeks ago, and we're trying to finalize all of our rental inventory orders. And she's really stressing over this. And I finally was like, hey, listen, I'd rather owe Consalmer and KHS a bunch of money for a bunch of instruments we have that we didn't rent than to have customers and band directors asking, how come you don't have any more flutes, and me not be able to get them. So, because if we end up owing KHS or anyone, I can give them the option, hey, I can pay you as I get it, or I can send the inventory back, or I can work something out. But if I need, more Eastman trumpets and it's September, I'm going to be in trouble.
That's kind of where I'm thinking too. I'm like, well, I'd rather have this stuff and take a little longer to pay it off than not have it.
I'll need it next rental season if I can't use it now, right? Yeah, it's not going to go bad,
Right. Exactly.
So, yeah, all right, I'm with you on that. So, yeah, normally I ask people where they see their business in like the next year and next 3 years, but I get it, that's really hard. Tell me, thinking like maybe further out, like just 10 years, what's kind of your dreams for Nick Rail Music and in the future?
No, more of what we're doing. Like, I think that we have a really good business. I think we have a super stable business. There are definitely rooms, areas that we need improvement and growth. But I think if we can just keep trucking along and doing the things that we're doing, I think that it's just going to keep going. I imagine, opening more locations as necessary. Just, doing more of what we're doing.
I love it. So, and I know you haven't had Nick Rail Music very long, but you've been in this industry for a long time. Tell me about a negative situation that you've experienced in your business career that ultimately had a positive effect, but you wouldn't want to repeat it again.
The first and most prominent thing that comes to mind, a lot of sexism and sexual harassment. That's not been great. And it happens way more frequently than people want to admit. I think it's still a very prominent problem. I think it happens in all industries, but I was surprised at how much it happened to me. As an outside rep, especially going to visit people for the first time and having to put up with some pretty awful behavior. That gets old real fast. And even with this business purchase, I had a particular landlord who would not sign the lease over to me without having my dad, my husband, or my brother help me with the lease, which I was floored that it was even an issue, but it was. So you think that it doesn't happen, but it definitely does. And even it was one of the last things to tie up the sale of the business was getting this lease signed over, and he wouldn't without like a male sidekick on my part. It was really stupid. So that is a problem, but as far as getting through it, it has helped me stand up for myself a little bit more, and not be so much of like a nice guy pushover, not wanting to ruffle feathers. Every time it happened, it kind of just reinforced to me that I needed to stand up for myself more. So I think in the long run, I mean, it sounds super corny, but I think in the long run, it gave me courage, and also helps me talk about it and just tell people that it's not acceptable and that it's still happening, and people want to think that it doesn't and that, you know, everything's changed and better, but it's not. There's still a lot of it that goes on, and the music industry is still very much a good old boys club, and a lot of girls aren't welcome, which is really sad. And it was even obvious at NAMM this year. The last day of NAMM, it was just my husband and I walking around, and there would be times that he would walk into a booth and they would talk to him, and then if I walked into a booth by myself, nobody would talk to me until my husband came up and was standing next to me. So it's dumb that it still happens, but that is definitely a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you think that happens? Like, let's stick with the NAMM thing for right now. You hear this from a lot of people. You go to a booth and get ignored. Why do you think that happens?
Part of it, I just don't think there's a lot of women leadership in the industry. So people assume that you don't have a decision-making role just because statistically women don't. But I do think it happens too for dumb reasons, like they don't think we're smart or qualified. I don't know. You meet enough amazing women in the industry that are in leadership positions. I mean, some of the most awesome women I've ever met, like, you know, Leslie Belton, Robin Walenta, Dee Dee Hyde, Whitney Grotoffi, like these amazing women leaders. But there's just not enough of them. And so I don't think people assume as a woman that you're in a leadership role, which is sad. I think it's sad.
I mean, I don't want to be taken the wrong way here. You know, I don't know. I'm sure there's some of it that is that happens because it's sexism, right? Like it's people that feel like you're a woman, so you couldn't possibly or whatever. But I think in 2020, that's probably a sliver of it. I think the vast majority of it is that all of us deal with our own stereotypes, confirmation biases, and we would all struggle with that, you know, because if you're working in a booth, I don't know, you've done it, you worked for Maple Leaf, you've worked trade shows and stuff. Like, first of all, I couldn't imagine, and I've never had to work a trade show booth at NAMM, but 4 days of winter NAMM, like with drums going on and everything else, I could imagine if I was a manufacturer's rep that it would just wear me smooth slick. And then for a lot of those manufacturers reps, they also have to set up and tear down the booth. So they, you know, it's a week-long thing for them of just constant, and then they have to take clients out for dinner, and like, you know, I could just get how it could be hard to be on your A game the entire time. I'm not trying to make excuses for folks. I'm trying to be understanding, and I think it can be difficult. And then when you look and see that the vast majority of people that work in this industry are men, you know, just because, I mean, just like most guitar players are men, whatever reason, they seem to have taken the biggest interest in not only doing it, but deciding, you know, I think I'd rather own a business where I could be around all my favorite toys and not actually work for a living. They seem to be the ones that have kind of taken that jump, you know. I could see how a lot of people just not with the intention of, you know, being sexist, but just would assume that, like, I mean, gosh, I know most of women leaders in this industry, and they, like you mentioned, there's you rattle off that number, but there's tons and tons of men that are in this industry, and I think it's almost like I don't know, maybe I could be wrong here, and if I'm wrong, I'm totally willing to admit that I'm wrong, but I think it's almost like an innocent mistake in most cases versus just being like, there's no way you could run a business, you know. I just think in their experience, it's not what they most commonly see.
I would agree with you until it continues to happen and they know that I'm the owner and they still are only talking to my husband.
Yeah,
so
that's a problem then. Yeah. Yeah, screw
Right,
those
so-
people.
Well, that's right. I know.
I'm not
Like, well,
defending
fine.
those sons of bitches.
Sell to
Like-
someone else. I know. Well, and my husband and I had a really big discussion about this on the way home from NAMM because I told him I was really frustrated about this, that I thought it was stupid, that nobody would talk to me in some of these booths, and they were only talking to him, and he was like, "No, I don't think that happened." I'm like, "How?" It was so obvious, and I'm not trying to be super hypersensitive about it, but it's a problem, and it even goes down. I mean, look at even just your own staff members. Like, how many women are on your staff as a sales team? And not you, but like in general, just, industry wide. How many women sales reps are there? How many women in manufacturing are there? There's a lot of women in really stereotypical roles of, marketing, HR, things like that. But there's not a lot in leadership. And I had the opportunity to go to the Smart Women in Music Leadership Summit in March, which was awesome. But we all kind of expressed the same things where there's not that many. And I don't think it's that they're not applying. I think it's that they're not getting the jobs, which that
I can tell you in my case, it's because they're not applying.
Well, and that's part of it too.
It's 10 to 20 to 1 male to female. And any reasonably qualified female candidate I get definitely gets a shake because I really like having as diversified of a staff as I can have. And it's been one of the hallmarks of Springfield Music forever. Like, it was one of the first stores I ever ran into that had women in management positions, women in sales positions, women in leadership positions, going back to like the 80s and 90s when it was super, super uncommon. And so we have a big belief in it. And of course, what I find is that in periods of our operation where we've had a lot of women in visible roles, then it tends to attract other women to apply, and then it becomes easier to get them. But if you're in a situation where you don't have women in visible roles, it is super hard to get them to apply. And I think maybe it's because of what we do. I mean, first of all, it's hard for me to hire like band people, like, because if you're a band person, you either want to play all the time or you want to teach. And so it's hard to hire band folks. And on the combo side, most of the folks are guys and not women.
Well, it's hard.
I think it's really tough.
Yeah. Well, and you have to come down to it. I mean, is it a systematic problem? Is it just cultural? I mean, there's so many ways to discuss it that, I mean, we could just be blue in the face and still not be done. But I do think as an industry, there's really good steps being made. Like, I know NAMM is trying really hard to diversify, which is great. There's the swim group, which is awesome. There are more women that are being put in leadership roles, which is great. But it's definitely still a challenge. And I think people think it's less of a problem than it really is.
Yeah, I think it's a problem. This is funny. This is like a white person telling black people how they should think or feel about something. So everyone, just please forgive me. We're just having a conversation and sharing opinions. I, hope everyone, no one like thinks like, God, that guy's an asshole or whatever. But I think it's a problem. But it's a problem more from like how to change it where we get women more involved and not necessarily, because if you ask like my feeling, and maybe just because I'm so woke that I just can't see this, but like I feel like I know a lot of business people that would love to have women more involved in their company. There's just not really clear of where to find them and how to make that happen. Because first of all, most of the people I know in our industry don't do a great job of recruiting for talent. Sure. They basically hire whoever walks in their door. And if you can fog a mirror and stuff like that, then you're probably hired. And so they don't do a great job of recruiting. And if you're going to hire what walks in and ask for a job, like historically, that's predominantly been men. And so it's an issue, but I don't know what I remember like years ago, we were wanting to hire more women salespeople for our store. And so I was like, you know what, let's write an ad and let's hire a designer that's a woman, so that maybe there's language I'm using, because I started researching this and I thought maybe I'm using language or imagery that's like not appealing, let me have someone else write it and see what they come up with. And I thought she did a nice job with the ad. I thought she did a nice job with the copy. still didn't work. You know, I mean, like it was just really, really difficult. Now it may be that, you know, women come into our stores and like, I don't want to work here. Like it might be, but like we have a reputation of having clean, well decorated, nice stores. Like it's not, you're not going to come in at places like super disorganized and dirty. Like, you know, it's not, I don't know. And I feel like we have a very accommodating staff. Like, I think it's really difficult. I would love for someone to solve it because it's something that I would love to, like, I know in our two main leaders are two women that are involved in our business. And that may make us a little bit unique because again, not everyone has that. But even with that, having like 2 of the 3 people at the top being female, it is super hard to find other women to work in our company. There's only a handful, taking outside of the teachers, excluding the teachers, there's only a couple of women left in any other roles. And some of them are in sort of traditional female roles. They're in like the office accounting type side. And we're training right now one for repair tech, which is super cool. Like
That's
to
great.
be a band repair tech. And like, that's really neat to do, but it's just super hard. So I guess what I'm asking, Laura, is for you and the women in swim, get this shit figured out so the rest of us can figure out how to hire more of you all. And
well,
we need it.
Yeah,
and people of color too. Like, man, I get like almost, I mean, now partially in Springfield is like 97% white, but I also have a store in Kansas City and I have a store in St. Louis, which are historically have large or a larger percentage Black population than what we'd have here in Springfield. But even then, like the people that apply to work in the store that are a person of color is still like a very, 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 very small amount. And then people that apply that are qualified, and by qualified, I'm looking for, do you play one of the main instruments that we sell, which for us would be guitar, or any of the band instruments or orchestra instruments. It's even smaller still. You know, it's usually like they maybe have some kind of like electronic music experience or music production experience, something like that. It's like, but that's not what, we don't do that. You know, we're a guitar shop and a band rental shop. Like, it's just, I don't know, super hard. Please someone fix this so that, because a lot of us want to do the good thing and do the right thing. It just needs to be easier. It's super hard. I hope Robin, Walenta, and Leslie and other people don't listen to this, just lose all respect and affection whatever they hold for me. I hope it doesn't all go away. So.
Good. Well, and I do think it's one of those things that, you know, like I said, a lot of people don't think it's as big of a problem as it is. And even if percentage-wise the applicants are, what am I trying to say? Even if the percentage of applicants is lower, I think as an industry, we need to be a little bit more supportive of that. So if there are women that apply, if there are people of color that apply, just kind of giving a little extra help, recognizing the challenges that they're all going to face. I mean, like even me going into NAMM, I've been in the industry for a while. Like you would think that some people would know who I am just from the other, I mean, I don't want to be like, you must know who I am. But people, I mean, it shouldn't be a deal that I'm a woman in a leadership position and have people ignore me. Like, that's not acceptable in any sense of the word. It just, I don't know exactly what I'm trying to say. We should edit this part because it's not like getting my point across.
Laura, this is a great conversation because it's comfortable. You know, I mean, like kind of going out on a limb and criticizing other people, or even going out on a limb and saying, I'm not sure that's totally right. Like that's an awkward, what's easy to say is just to say all the things that are accepted. And to not admit areas where you think like, hey, I'm challenged by this. You know, I had a conversation with someone, this was a couple of years ago, and it didn't go very well because as usual, wasn't very articulate. And she was making a similar argument to kind of what you're making. And it was specifically about NAMM and going into trade show booths and being ignored. And I was trying to explain to her that like, you don't understand, like I go into booths and get ignored all the time. And I'm a, middle-aged white guy and I'm super active in our industry as well. Like, it's not like I walk in and people are like, holy shit, here's a white guy that like looks like he plays guitar. Like everyone stop what you're doing, roll the red carpet. Like, no, I get ignored too. And the problem I see it is this, is sometimes as a woman or a person of color, you're ignored because you're a woman or a person of color. And sometimes you're ignored because the other person is either just a bad salesperson or is just exhausted from a week of NAM.
Sure.
And so you're ignored that way. How in the world, if you're a woman or a person of color, are you supposed to know the difference? Like, how are you supposed to know, am I being ignored because I'm a woman, or am I being ignored because this person can't sell, or am I being ignored because they're sick and exhausted and got anthrax or whatever? Like, you know, and when it happens enough either way, there's no way for you to tell, you know?
I agree with that. And I do, you know, we try to give people the benefit of the doubt. And I mean, I've worked trade shows, it's exhausting. And sometimes you just don't want to talk to anyone, regardless of who they are. So I get that. But I do think some of the follow-up when people do start talking to you kind of illustrates if it's a problem.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to take this the wrong way. I'm not trying to, you know, say, you know, people aren't bad actors. Like there certainly are. I just think sometimes it's hard to diagnose it, you know, and I think sometimes we miss it. We diagnose something as someone as being bad when that may not be wholly accurate, you know?
Sure.
Anyway, okay, that was a fun conversation. It was very uncomfortable, which usually for me is a good time. So
we got through it.
Yeah, if you feel uncomfortable, then that must have been good. So if you could send a message to yourself in 10 years, this is always the question I ask, kind of close every interview. So a message to you back in roughly 2010, doesn't have to be exactly 2010, but somewhere around there. What would you tell the younger you?
So 2020 was a particularly challenging year for us as a family. We were going through some pretty severe transitions, some pretty severe challenges, both personally, financially, all those things. I don't know how deep we want to get into it, but we were really
Totally up to you.
We were in really bad shape. We were both out of work. We were trying to make ends meet. I was pregnant with my second kid. So we were in a really bad place, and it was not looking like there was a lot of hope on the horizon. So if I was talking to myself 10 years ago, just hold on. Like you'll get through it. You'll get through it. And trying to just put things into perspective, that I truly, truly believe that things will work out in the end. And if it's not all right, then it's not the end. And just to work your butt off, because it'll be good.
So what message do you want to send to the you in 2030?
Oh, girl, I hope you made it. Oh, and I'm sure it's going to be so many like gray hairs and wrinkles, but I hope it's worth it.
Will you dye your hair if it turns gray? Are you going to age gracefully, or are you going to fight it every step of the way?
I don't know. I found a couple gray hairs since this started, and it was pretty traumatic. So I don't know. We'll have to see. That remains to be seen.
Yeah. I love it. I think, that's going to be a really, most people have a similar answer to what you said about the 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. It's going to be worth it. Hang in there, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. In your case, in particular, the 10 years in the future is going to be really fascinating, because most people think about their 10 years in the future. They can base it off their career. And of course, most people I've talked to have owned their store for a while. So they've got enough stuff of like, okay, I've kind of been doing this, and here's what I think about doing the next. And so here's what I want to say. In your case, you're just like, hope we made it,
and in 10 years, it'll be like, yay, the loan's paid off.
Yeah, that's true. Like now we can really start getting paid, and like we can do the things we want to do.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
That'll be good. Yeah.
I love it. Well, I'm in a similar boat. At Springfield Music, I've been there forever. The guy who actually owns all the corporation has been retired forever, but I just basically run it. And but we've decided this year, because of like that SBA program where they're paying the first 6 months, and just how some things are really advantageous right now, that this would be a good time to probably execute this transition. And so like you, I mean, you did it not knowing this was coming, and I'm doing it now that we're kind of somewhere in the middle of it. I don't know where, I'm hoping either the middle to end and not the very, very beginning. It's actually going to get way worse. We just have no idea. But like, you just hope that you think you can get your way through it. And again, man, I'm super grateful for our VP of finance, because like she's put out this 10-year projection. And like in our case, of course, you know, we've both been there. She's been here for 2 or 3 years. I've been here for almost 20. And we've got all this info that we can pull off of to kind of look and see how things will likely go. So we can take a lot of faith in our projections, other than, you know, right now you just don't know what the near future looks like.
Right.
But there's a certain amount of just like, you have to be one of those people that just kind of hopes for the best and is willing to just say, well, you know, whatever happens, we'll figure it out. So let's just go.
Right. That's exactly right. There's a lot of that going on. Yep.
Yeah. Because it's kind of scary, but like, I don't know. To me, it's going back to that Colby quick start thing. I'm enough of a quick start. Like, yeah, it's scary, but this looks cool. Like, let's just do it. And if it doesn't work out, I'll figure it out. I've figured it out for 20 years now. Like, I'll figure it out again if I have to. So this has been a lot of fun. Did you have a good time talking about what you've done so far? Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. It's my first interview. It's kind of,
oh, cool.
I was pretty stressed.
Yeah. It's easy.
But it's good.
Yeah.
I hope I don't listen to it later and I'm like, oh, such an idiot. Like,
no, I contributed enough stupid things that you're going to sound so smart when people listen to. I mean, I stuck up for like sexists and bigots. Like, come on, like, you're gonna you sound like an angel compared to that.
Oh
like,
gosh.
you know,
I love it. It's good.
I hope for sure people don't take that the wrong way. So, tell me, who's someone that you think I should interview for the podcast?
Ooh, Chris Behrens would be excellent.
He's on my list. Yeah,
he is fantastic. Like one of my favorite people ever. I think. What else is really interesting? Jason Blank has a really interesting story with his life and music.
From Maple Leaf.
Yeah. So he has a lot of flute background too. So that he's got a lot of interesting background. Man, anyone that went to that swim leadership, they all have great stories. They're just amazing. Those women are amazing. Who else?
Who were some of those women that were in swim?
Let me think of some of them.
I've tried to get Robin, and Robin says she'll do it, but just not right now.
Right. Yeah, so Robin and Dee Dee and Crystal, who I can't remember her last name, are in the presidency of that. Any of them would be good. I can't remember a lot of the girls' last name. Ooh.
Is Crystal from, is she from the manufacturing side?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, with Gator
Which company
Cases.
is she with?
Gator.
The Dario Cases. Oh, Gator. Yeah, that's right. Gator Cases. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'll have to put together a list. I'll email you a list of like people that I think would be interesting.
Yeah. I want to talk to as many women as I can so that I could get them to all think I'm a sexist pig. That's my goal.
That's a good plan. That's a good plan.
Oh my gosh. It really isn't. Like, I was raised by my mother and my older sister, my divorced home and single parent home. And so and my mother is like I said, single parent, very strong, charismatic woman. I've just grown up having a lot of love and affection and admiration for like strong women and stuff, which is why like I've always tried to surround myself with them.
No, I think that's the thing, because my husband was raised the same way, and I mean, not like he was raised with strong women in his life, and I do find that men that are raised with strong women in their life don't see as obvious as the sexism problem is, because you can relate so little to it. Do you know what I mean? Like it would never cross your mind to treat a woman like that, and so it's like, well, no, how can that be a problem? But my husband's the same way. And so when I point it out, he's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. I'm like, believe it, because it happens. But it's so foreign to him where he's like, how can that even be? Like, I don't know, you tell me. Like, so I do think that is, I don't think you're unique in that if you're raised around really strong women, you don't see it as a problem, because you would never ever, it would never cross your mind to treat someone like that. You know? Right.
Well, it's the same thing with being racist. Like I grew up in a non-racist household, which is a little unusual maybe for my, I'm of that age and from the Midwest where it's still pretty common. You know, I grew up with lots of people that were racist, but like my family and stuff absolutely was not. but I just kind of had the impression growing up as a kid, like there's plenty of reasons to not like people that have nothing to do with their skin color. Like,
Right.
there's people that are assholes and idiots and stuff like that. Like you can dislike them for that, but like, why would you care what, like they have no control over their skin color or any of that. Like, why would that still boggles my mind when I still think most people, when they say that, I think they're conflating culture with race. I think there's things about cultures I don't like,
Sure.
but even then it's not a race culture I don't like. It's just there's certain things about like poor white, poverty culture, period, that I don't support.
Right.
There's also things about like extreme wealth culture that I don't support either, but poor people have poor ways. And like, there's there's decisions that those people make that I don't think are good and don't support them. But it's not because they're white or black or Mexican or Chinese or Indian or whatever. Like, that's not a part of it. Like, none of that's made any sense to me. And I think the sexism is the same way. Like, I know a lot of women that aren't smart enough to run companies and stuff like that, but I know just as many men. Like,
Right.
they're just people. It's not that they're women that they're not smart enough. They're just, as a person, they're not smart enough. As a man, they're not smart enough. Like, not everyone's cut out to do it. And yeah, it is. I'm probably a little bit blind to it just from that. You're probably right. It's unfortunate that. That there's people though that are making those conscious decisions,
Right. Right.
So,
That's right.
all right. Well, this was a lot of fun. I appreciate making time to do it, and it's
Of course.
fun to. I've only interviewed 2 people out of the 20 something of these interviews I've done. Only a couple where they're pretty new to owning the business. So it's so neat to get like sort of that perspective again. And it's also really cool to talk to someone who's got 20 years of experience or 30 years of experience. Like,
Sure.
those are lessons learned that you can only learn one way, and by doing it. But
Right.
sometimes it's nice to hear like, okay, like what's the person who's wet behind the ears, but also like hasn't been beat down yet with reality? What are they thinking? And there could be a lot of inspiration in that. So, well, this is cool. If you think anybody else you think would be good, let me know. And then whenever I've got the episode scheduled to air, I'll shoot you a message and let you know.
Okay, perfect. Do you mind sending me like a recording of just this? That way I can watch it, and like if there's parts I'm like, we should not play that part.
Yeah, I'll I think there's a way I can share that with you on Zoom. So I'll figure that out, share it with you.
Perfect.
It won't be
Perfect.
edited or anything yet, but it'll just
That's
be
fine.
like the raw file. So,
Perfect.
because once I
Perfect.
have it edited, that's when it'll be all done. So cool. Hey, this was a lot of fun, Laura.
Thank you. It's nice talking with you.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.